Okay, in this section we're talking all about comments and how they work. Now in the previous section we mentioned a comment outline as a tool for planning out your logic, but comments are very, very important for more than just a comment outline. They make your program much more readable and understandable, and as outlined in the text in this section, that's very, very critical. So in this video we're going to be looking at the two different types of comments and how they work. Additionally, I've found that students a lot of times limit their perspective on comments. That is to say, okay, this type of comment must be used exactly this way, and this type of comment must be used exactly this other way, and that's simply not the case. There's a lot of flexibility with these types of comments, and we're going to look at all of those different well, not all, but we're going to look at several of those to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So and then at the end of the video there is something that Eclipse does a little differently by default, and I will address that and show that to you again at the end of the video. However, we're looking at comments in C++. They pretty much work the same. Well, they do work the same in both Visual Studio and Eclipse. So we're just going to be using Visual Studio except for at the end of the video. So you've noticed I've got this comment here, comments are coming, and note that it is in green. Now I did put this at the top, and there is something very important. I'm going to start typing some information that's important for you to put at the top of your program every time, and then we'll look at, okay, how do we turn that into a comment. One big thing is that you want to make sure that you have the file name. This may seem silly, but because, well, this is your file name right here, main CPP, but if you're looking in some other text editor, it may not be apparent. So you want to make sure that you have that file name. Another thing, oh, it's going to indent on me because I'm going to skip a space there. You want to have probably, well, your name. This is going to be very dependent on the environment you're working in. In other words, if you're taking this course somewhere else, let's say at a at a college or a university, and you're using this as a tutorial, your instructor may have specific information and layout that they require or that they want. Or not just that, if you have an employer, they may have something similar, but these are good bits of information to have. Here I'm just going to put LogiKomp video. Okay, and it's also good to have a created date. Now let's see, what's today's date? That's 8/4/2017. Now that's just going to be the created date. You're going to go back and edit some of that stuff, so you can put last edited. Now of course, when if you're working for a larger company, there's all kinds of systems. You're going to be working on a team, working with these different things, and there's different systems entirely dedicated to checking things out and tracking revisions and all that type of stuff. That's beyond the scope of this course, but just to let you know, that is very possible that you will encounter that. And this last edited may become a moot point. One other thing that I find particularly useful, and whenever you're to put at the top of your source code files, and that is a description. All right, and so and you notice I left a space here, and all these indents are just happening automatically in Visual Studio. So I may decide to, when we go to turning everything into a comment, I'll probably get rid of those. But you have a description here, and when you have multiple lines that do include, you know, like if you've got this one thing, let's say if this date ran, you know, into a second line, indenting the next one helps keep everything together. So this description is going to be, or could be, more than one line. So, and we're going to put it right there. It just makes it easier to read. But I'll start. This program is intended to, let's see, instruct users in the basics. Now there's not going to be a line return, so it'll just keep going and going and going and going way off screen. Of creating and coding a C++ program. So now maybe it's a little more obvious what I was talking about. Let's indent here because this is all one sentence. So by indenting it, it keeps it more together. And again, I don't necessarily want this stuff indented. Want to keep that indented, but not that much. Okay. So this is all very good information to have at the top of your file. This way, if you open it up, first thing up top, it's like, oh, okay, this is the file that I'm looking at. And if it was written by you, you'll know it. A lot of times, if you look at open source code, you'll have a lot of this similar type of information. But again, perhaps most important is going to be this description, because you open the file, let's say you're looking at the file and you've named it something perhaps a little more descriptive than the way we did it with main. Of course, it is in a folder that is more descriptive, but still, it's like, okay, what exactly does this do? So you have a description right here, and the description could end up being a lot longer if it's a lot longer program. But then you open it up, it's like, oh, okay, that's what all the source code in here actually does. And you say that, well, this is what I'm looking for, or it's not. So this is a good way to be able to tell that very quickly. All right, again, this video is all on comments, and we want this to be all comments. So what we need to do is look at the mechanics of how comments work in C++. Now there are two types of comments. There's the single line comment, okay, and there is the multi-line comment. Okay. It's not necessarily, you could just have a space instead of the dash, but not terribly important. Now, so I'm going to use these two lines to show you the mechanics of how these two types work. A single line comment is created with two slashes. See how everything turned green? So everything after these two slashes on this line, single line, becomes a comment. So to make this a little more obvious, let's just draw these little arrows in here. Well, not draw, but type in these arrows. Anything that we type after this, anything at all on this line, okay, is going to be a comment. Okay, a multi-line comment. Now we're going to show you some creative ways to use these. Don't worry. A multi-line comment is started with a slash and an asterisk, like that. However, you notice what all of this turned green. That's because you have to end it. Okay, so, and you end it with just the opposite order, just like a little mirror. So it's like a little, kind of like a little frame here. You open it here and close it here. So what you have here, let's denote with arrows, is, sorry about that, is anything in between these things. Whereas this, anything on the rest of this line after those two slashes is going to be a comment. So we've got the arrows. It's just anything else on this line. But with a multi-line comment, it's anything in between here. I know this seems a little bit like I'm going through a lot of trouble to explain this, but these names, single line comment and multi-line comment, get kind of confusing, and students often think, oh, well, I can only use it this way or that way, and that's just simply not the case. Notice that this is all on one line. It is, and I'm not going to be able to leave this in here, but outside the comment. See, it's just gonna, you put int, see, it's gonna, remember from before how ints, it identified that as a keyword for integer. See, you're back into code on this same line. But if you drop that close down to the next line, what do you have here? Now it's all comments. So that's why it's called a multi-line comment, because it can span more than one line. However, I'm going to leave this stuff in a format to where if you look at the code viewer, you'll say, oh, okay, this is how that works. This is how a single line comment works. This is how a multi-line comment. Multi-line comment. Alright, so we need to, again, turn this stuff into a comment. And as you may have figured out, there are a lot of ways that we can do it. We can do it with single line comments and multi-line comments. Let's start with the simplest. We can just turn every line. We can even skip that one because it's just blank. Or we could fill it in there if we wanted to, and turn everything into a single line comment. Now, this may look really tedious, but it's not going to carry my indents too well. 2-space indents are pretty good. This may look pretty tedious, and the way I'm doing it is, however, if you're typing this along, if every time you hit enter you just automatically type 2 slashes, it's actually really easy if you're typing these slashes as you're going. But you may not like doing it this way with all of the slashes, and a lot of times if you've got this many in the comments, people go, well, that's just a waste of time, let's make it a multi-line comment. And we will here. If you've just got 1 or 2 lines, going through and typing 2 slashes right in front of it works out really well, believe it or not. Unfortunately, now my formatting may not be so great anymore. Oh, it is really bad. This is going to take a while for me to get all this back to the way it was. hit tab. Get rid of that. Okay, now we're back to the way we were. Oops, except for this one. Alright, so to make a multi-line comment, you can start above or below, however you want. Jump the gun on hitting shift there, and it automatically put a second one in. You can take this one, highlight it, and just drag it down here. Now that automatically turns everything in between. This is your opening your comment, closing your comment, turns everything in between into a comment. So if you've already got some text and you want to comment, that's going to be a real easy way to do it. But as you're typing, it's not too big of a deal to just type 2 slashes, and especially if you've only got a line or two. So those are the basic usages for the single line comment and the multi-line comment. You also don't have to start, you can start these indented. And this is a primary way that single line comments are used. It's right above a section. See, I've got these kind of separated by spaces. Now as you become more of a better programmer, you're going to have bigger little chunks here with the spaces. But at the beginning of a little chunk of code, a lot of times you can describe with a single line comment. Note, I'm not starting all the way to the left. I'm starting and actually lining that code up, or that comment up with the code. And that helps when you're reading it to let you know, okay, this comment goes with this code. Again, you're going to be doing a lot more indenting, but if you line that single line comment up with that code, works out pretty well and displays a message. So you can say, well, it does that. However, you don't just have to do it in its own line. Remember, up here with single line comments, it turns everything after it into a comment. And somewhere I mentioned something about putting comments in, or maybe it was in the text there somewhere, about putting comments in the margin. After this pause int, we can say, you'll learn about declarations later, but declare an integer. And note, this is not commented out. It's everything after it. So you can put little side notes out to the right. Did you catch that? So you can put little side notes out to the right, just like that. So that's another way to use a single line comment. Those are actually the primary ways that you will use single line comments, is to kind of hit up a little chunk or a section. Actually, later on you'll have more code blocks like are inside these things, and you can do that, and you'll see we'll actually have a section later where all your functions are, and you can type something in all caps with a bunch of asterisks and stuff to denote a completely different section separate from main. You'll see all of that, but this is primarily the two ways that you'll use that. Now here's another interesting thing that you can do with the multi-line comment. Remember I said it's everything in between these, but they don't even have to be on the same line. I mean, they don't even have to be on different lines. They can be on the same line. Like right here, they were on different lines. So we open here, and then all of this stuff on the different lines it became a comment. Okay. And by the way, if I didn't mention it earlier, it is in the course text there in this section. But what happens is you say, okay, why are we doing all these comments? They turn green. That's great, but it's not showing any syntax problems once it turns green. The compiler with comments will just throw these out. The compiler does not use these at all. It just throws them out. They're only for people reading and looking at your program, by the way. So that's the thing. If you make something a comment, it just gets thrown out. It's not included as part of your code. As far as the compiler is concerned, it doesn't even exist. Okay. All right. Now back to the multi-line. Here we had it. We made a bunch of comments here with on different lines. Here it was just within one line. It would be difficult for me to explain a situation where you might want to do this, but there could be. You can have things like parameter lists and everything, and you want to get rid of one parameter that's in the middle of some parentheses, and I mean it can get to be, actually let's see if this one has one. No, this does not have an overload. It doesn't have, well, I'll just put it there anyway. Comment here. You're not really going to want a comment here. You're going to want, you know, something else. Right here. But you want to comment out something right out of the middle of a single line. And you can do that. You can do that with a multi-line comment. Check this. So we're going to start this. Now the whole rest of the program is commented out because we don't have a little close on that. So we need to make sure and put one in. And we'll star slash. And there you go. So this will actually run this way. Because the compiler will just throw all this green stuff out. It's like it doesn't even exist. So this is another way to use a multi-line comment. So a lot of times when you use the single line comment, it's either for a whole line like a heading, like right there, or as like a little margin comment. And with the multi-line, a lot of times it's either for doing several lines like that and commenting out all of that stuff, or commenting something right in the middle of the line. So those are the two main uses for that. However, you may, in your coding, you may find, you know, a lot of different ways that you find useful for your particular style for using comments. But unfortunately, a lot of times students think, hey, if it's a multi-line comment, I have to use it that way. If it's a single line comment, I have to use it this way. And that's just not the case. Keep in mind exactly the mechanics of how it works. Single line, everything after the two slashes is a comment. Multi-line, everything in between these two things, whether they're on the same line, middle of the line, on different lines, whatever, everything in between these two becomes a comment. Now I want to show you something a little neat here where you can actually combine these two. And I'll explain why you might want to do something like that. So right here, declare an integer that is not used to create a warning. You may remember from an earlier video where that's pretty much the reason I put that there, was so that it would generate a warning and so that you could see, okay, what a warning is. Just so that you're like, oh, what are all these warnings, and that they're not syntax errors and everything. Anyway, that's the description of what this is. However, maybe we don't want that included in our program for a particular run or not, and this is how you can combine them. Oops, that's going to indent on me. We'll open the comments. Okay, down here I'm going to put a little extra space, and we're going to close the comment right underneath it. So this lets you know that you've got a section of code that has all been commented out. But let's say for some reason or another you want to show someone else how this will create a warning. You want to leave this in here just in case you need to show someone how that will create a warning. what you can do is take this as selected, and just move it up there. Now, guess what? You've still got a description of what this little chunk of stuff is. Either way, this doesn't suddenly become part of the code, but this does. So this is a way of combining your multi-line comment with a single line comment. Your single line comment is still here. This is just going to override it. It doesn't matter, right? However, if you want to move this up here so that this becomes available and the compiler sees it, you still have your single line description right there. And you could have a whole bunch of little sections like this, and you could comment them all out with a multi-line comment just like that. So that's a neat little combo thing that you can do. Okay, excellent. So that's how comments work. Those are different ways of using them. Remember, you're not limited to just this for multi-line comments or just this for single line comments. All right, last review before we look at that thing in Eclipse. Remember, 2 slashes, everything else on the rest of this line becomes a comment, on and on and on and on and on for the rest of this line. Multi-line comment, doesn't matter if it's in the same line or not. You've got an open, a close, and everything in between those two becomes a comment. All right. Now, comments are very, very important. Please note in all of the other videos where we're writing code, note how the comments are used. I cannot emphasize enough how important comments are to your program. Even though they have nothing to do with the compiled binary, they are still very, very important for not just other people, but when you're looking at your own program, it's extremely important. So just pay attention to how they're used in the videos throughout the course to help you with some style with all of that. Okay, great. And now, like I said, they work the same, no matter where you're, either here or Eclipse. And I can't think of an IDE where I've seen comments be anything other than green, right? I mean, there probably has been, and perhaps it was some other language, but one is not coming to me. You're looking at green here. So they do work the same in Eclipse, except, okay, if you're not interested in Eclipse, you're probably good to go. But this is kind of a neat little thing. What this now, when you first open it, it's automatically collapsed. So we'll expand that. This is actually created when you create the file. Well, yeah, when you create the source file, it automatically creates this for you. And it's very similar to what we've got here. But maybe you don't like the way it's done. Note they put little stars in there. Okay, they've got your little asterisks all the way down, which, that's a styling thing. You can do different types of styling things. You could make a whole box where that last slash is way out here somewhere and box it all in, whatever. You may or may not like this style. You may want to do it all, from scratch every time, or maybe you want to change how it's formatted. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. Hopefully I can remember. It's very, very deep in here. First, go to Window, then go to Preferences. Go to C++, expand that. Okay, then go to Code Style. Then expand that. Then click on Code Templates. I told you this is deep. Okay. Then you've got code templates that pop out over here. At Comments, expand Comments. Now you've got different things that will automatically put little kind of like header comments in here, so you can find for those when you're working through and you find some of those things. Some of this might come later. Anyway, files. This is where it's created. You notice, oh, and you can make this dialog box bigger, though I think every time you use it, it resets back to the same size. But if you're having a hard time reading, you can always adjust some of these fields. But there it is. So you can edit that, or you can just erase it altogether, delete that, and then it's not gonna, I'm gonna cancel. Then it's not gonna pop this in every time. Okay, that's one small thing. Other than that, again, comments work just the same, regardless. They're even still green. But it's very important that you use comments and use them frequently, use them well, and hopefully this video then has shown you how you can really effectively use the two different types of comments. And this source code right here will be available then in the so I ought to mixed tabs and spaces, fix this. Hopefully that, okay, it had to do with when I was putting all the spaces and stuff in there. This will be available directly underneath this video where it says Open Code Viewer. It'll have all these little comments in here so that you can go in and look at it and play with these different things and see exactly how they work for yourself. All right, excellent. That's been saved. I thought, maybe after the Tabify it didn't save. Oh well, we're going to save now. And we're done here. Exit Eclipse. Okay, excellent. This concludes another video for Introduction to Programming with C++, brought to you by LogiKomp. You can access the full course by going to the course homepage at logikomp.com/introcpp. While we are proud to offer this course free of cost to individuals, we do ask that if you continue to use the course, that you support its production and maintenance by making at least a small purchase from LogiKomp Domains and Hosting. You can pick up a custom domain, renewable annually, for around $10 at logikomp.com/hosting. Thank you.